In just a few short weeks, Spider-Man Far From Home will take us to the end of Phase 3. While Avengers Endgame was a fitting end for some of our favorite Marvel characters, Far From Home might give us a glimpse at what the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe might hold. That future could include Spider-Man being the new Iron Man. In fact, the second trailer directly asks the question, will Spider-Man be the new Iron Man? So here's why we think he'd be great. Iron Man was with us since the very beginning. Captain America might get the first Avenger moniker, but it was Tony Stark that was the first to sign up for the Avengers Initiative. He was also the superhero who launched the juggernaut that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Since his introduction, Iron Man has been a core element of the MCU. In fact, he's been in the movies of his fellow Avengers more often than he's been in his own. It seemed only fitting that it would be Tony Stark who would make the big sacrifice to end the Infinity Saga, but it leaves an Iron Man-sized gap to fill. And from the looks of the second trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, that hole is going to be filled by our favorite friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, who also has been to space. When it comes down to it, Spider-Man is the best possible choice to take over Iron Man's role. While characters like Iron Man or Ant-Man might not have been considered marquee characters before the MCU, Spider-Man has always been. The boy bitten by a radioactive spider allowing him to do whatever a spider can is easily one of the most popular and well-known creations of Steve Ditko and Stan the Man Lee. Even though Peter Parker is a relatively new addition to the MCU, he's already one of the most recognizable members. Since the launch of the MCU with Iron Man, however, Robert Downey Jr. has managed to make Iron Man a top-tier superhero and household name. It's Spider-Man's popularity that caused his late entry into the MCU fold in the first place. After the comic book bust that followed the comic book boom, Marvel had a garage sale of all of its top characters to various studios to keep the lights running. It worked since Marvel survived and Fox acquired the rights to the X-Men and Fantastic Four, while Sony ended up with a spectacular Spider-Man. After a long battle involving rights dating all the way back to the short-lived 1970s TV show, which was totally a thing, the first movie to hit theaters featuring our favorite web-slinger came in 2002's Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi. Since that time, Sony has kept the franchise going, with 3 Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and 2 The Amazing Spider-Man movies starring Andrew Garfield. Sony released Spider-Man movies frequently enough that fans just assumed the web-slinger would never make it to the MCU, and that Marvel Studios had to press on without their most recognizable character. But apparently the folks at Marvel never gave up hope, and it paid off. Introduced in Captain America Civil War as Iron Man's secret weapon, Spider-Man was finally a part of the MCU. Just in time for the guy who built it to retire and pass the torch. Someone young like Spider-Man might be the best standard bearer for the future of the MCU. While Parker is young, he's also been there. When the Avengers fell apart and found themselves fighting each other, he was there as Iron Man's secret weapon. When the Black Order showed up to grab the Time Stone in Infinity War, Spider-Man swung into action. That landed him on the Q ship and a one-way ticket to Titan to face the planet's maddest Thanos. It didn't end well. We didn't want to see you go either, Peter. He also came back from the dead and was present for the final battle against Thanos in Endgame, playing a key part in the elaborate game of Keep Away. Over the course of the Infinity Saga, many bad things happened because of something Iron Man did. That includes the events that led to him becoming Iron Man in the first place. The attack by the 10 Rings in the first Iron Man movie was to get Tony Stark to build the terrorist organization Stark Weapons. Justin Hammer, looking to undercut his corporate rival, employed Whiplash, who had a beef with the Elder Stark. Making enemies was a family tradition for the Starks. Killian formed AIM because Stark big-timed him at a party. But it's not only Stark who gets griefed by his mistakes. When he tries to build a suit of armor around the world, that armor takes on a mind of its own, and gets straight to trying to destroy it. Peter Parker is no stranger to the consequences of his actions. After 2 Spider-Man franchises prior to coming to the MCU, they decided to forego Spider-Man's origin story, especially given it's one of the best-known stories in comics. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, though. It's the sad undercurrent behind Parker telling Tony that when you can do the things he can do, but don't, when the bad things happen, they happen because of you. As we all know, part of Spider-Man's origin involves him not stopping the man who'd later kill his uncle to spite a shady fight promoter. And it's not just personal tragedy that drives Peter, though. Spider-Man's signature enemy just so happens to be one of his best friend's dad. and the head of one of the major science companies of the Marvel world, Norman Osborn of Oscorp. There have been rumors that Norman Osborn might loom large in the future of the MCU as a major villain. After an epic finale like Endgame, there's every indication that Marvel Studios might give the Avengers movies a bit of a rest, allowing for the creation of a more personal villain rather than trying to top a titan who successfully wiped out half of all life in the universe. Norman Osborn may be first and foremost a Spider-Man hater, but he's more than comfortable taking his hating ways on the road and being a menace to the whole world of Marvel. He even managed to find himself taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. and forming Hammer. It's spelled like an acronym, but Osborn is so evil he didn't tell anyone what it even stood for. That is so evil. We just have to know what it is. Is it Heroes Against Massive Menaces Emergency Response? What's Osborn's first directive when he gets the reins of S.H.I.E.L.D./Hammer? Get me Peter Parker. At the time, everyone knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man because Iron Man had convinced him to register during Civil War. Then Captain America did his speech thing and he switched sides. Osborn also formed the Dark Avengers and even spends time as Iron Patriot. The point we're trying to make is that Norman Osborn gets around. With rumors suggesting that Osborn is the new landlord at the former Avengers Tower, he could be set to menace the MCU in the post-Infinity Saga world, and at the center of Osborn's hate circle is one friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. This sets up Peter Parker in the same role as Tony, the reluctant, chewy center of threats that face the Earth. But instead of it being a product of Stark's ego and hubris, it'll be Parker's eagerness to do the right thing, and take on the responsibility for everything that he can't prevent. But it's not just making enemies that made Stark important. He was also insanely popular, both in the MCU and in our world. When Alexander Pierce wants a celebrity Avenger cameo at his grandson's birthday party, it's Iron Man that he wants, and not just as a flyby. Justin Hammer's plot against Stark happens during Stark Expo, something driven not only by the prevalence of Stark Industries, but also its superhero head. Peter Parker is dirt poor. When he's handing out novelty checks, they're signed by Pepper Potts, but he's clearly recognizable enough to do the check handing out and to trade quips with New York's finest. Iron Man was the ambassador to the world for the Avengers, for better or worse. But he was also one half of the battle for identity of the Avengers, figuratively and literally. Captain America acted as the consciousness of the Avengers, where Tony was more of its id, the id that faced a crisis when he felt he wasn't able to defend the Earth. With Peter's nervous charm and earnestness, he stands to become the heart of the MCU. There's no better example of that than when he fails to intimidate Aaron Davis, aka the Prowler and uncle to Miles Morales. Instead, he pleads with him to help him find the weapons that the Vulture is peddling. He sincerely wants to do the right thing. However, being poor doesn't stop Peter from doing amazing things. After all, he got that spider bite because of his interest in science. It's also his interest in science that allowed him to create his web shooters. That means that he not only came up with a formula to create webs, but also the mechanism to shoot them. Given his special relationship to Tony and Happy's involvement with Spider-Man, he works with Spider-Man, not for Spider-Man, he probably has access to those Stark labs to make any future gear he wants, meaning he can also step into the role of one of the MCU's science bros. The MCU has no shortage of scientists, from the now merged Professor Hulk to Shuri to Dr. Eric Selvig, and if the rumors are to be believed, Norman Osborn. It seems like Marvel runs on super scientists just as much as superheroes. After all, they do make the super soldiers and suits of armor that make the world so fun. Along with science, says Shuri, Parker could be part of the new young generation of world-bending scientists, which might be how he relates to a particularly pliable scientist who could now be making his way into the MCU soon in the Baxter Building. Just like Iron Man ushered Spider-Man into the MCU, Peter Parker's science chops might be how Spider-Man ushers in the Fantastic Four. But the real reason that we might end up seeing Peter Parker as the new Iron Man of the MCU lies outside the MCU. While everyone will have their favorite Peter Parker, does anyone have Nicholas Hammond from the 1978 TV show? Anyone? No? Okay, Tom Holland has been a great choice, and is just downright adorable. From his naked enthusiasm for the role to his tendency to let the cat out of the bag when it comes to spoilers, he's quickly endeared himself to fans. And that on top of Spider-Man's built-in popularity that goes all the way back to his introduction in 1962, and Spider-Man's a natural choice to take over the role that Iron Man filled in the first 10 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, those are some of the ways that Spider-Man could take over for Iron Man in the MCU. What do you think? What role do you believe Spider-Man should take moving forward? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, make sure to subscribe to CBR for more MCU videos. Hey, thanks for watching.